Last week we started our Thanksgiving series, and I'm going to finish that up today. But if you remember, and I won't spend a lot of time with this because we did it last week, but I talked about the fact that there was at our Thanksgiving meals, and when I was a kid growing up, it was one of our practices. You may have the same kind of practice where you go around the table and you tell, everybody had to tell what they were thankful for. And once I graduated from the kids' table, I got to participate in that. I did tell you last week I got demoted from the kids' table. I spilt milk all over everything because I got too excited. So they demoted me back to the kids' table, and it took a year for me to get back up to the adult table. But anyway, so I want to give you that opportunity. And even this week, I received a phone call or this was a text, well, a phone call from Loretta, and she had some things that she'd like to share as well. So while she's going to share, if you've got something that you would like to share that you're thankful for, I want you to pass that on. Go ahead.
I'm not very good at this, but I'm going to do the best that I can because I think it's important to share with everybody. Linda is a lady that comes to my home. She's a new lady. I don't have any idea what her last name is, don't have a telephone number or anything, but that's the way they do things. She came to my house to help house cleaning. She came Friday at 3 until 5. And she was great to help set up for the 30 people that I will be having for Thanksgiving dinner. David will testify that I needed help after seeing the condition of my house. And at 5, she just sat down on my couch. And I could see that she needed to talk. We have so much in common. She started the conversation saying she had lost her husband in 2017. I found my husband Craig in the bathroom, gone in 2017. Linda's husband died with the worst kind of dementia, and it apparently took a lot of money. Craig died after 4 years of Alzheimer's. I spent a fortune on medication and none of it helped at all. I was very lucky that Craig was in insurance for 35 years with all the medical bills for him, his mother, and for Kathy. This is what helped save the farm. Linda and her husband were farmers, and she had to sell. Linda works every hour now to get out of debt. She then talked about her 5 children. My son is in the Army Air Force. I thought of Kevin. I asked her, what does he do? She said, I am so worried. He is responsible for loading and unloading the largest airplane in our military. Nothing goes in or out without his signature. He is leaving today, and I know it's for Israel. That country is so beautiful, and we need to save it, she said. I wish you could see it. I said, I've been there. I have seen it. She said, my faith is what keeps me going. I know the Bible says, do not be afraid and just put your trust in Him. God knows what is going to happen, and we cannot change His will. And she turned around and said, your plants are beautiful. I said that I get the water at the flowing well on 16th Street across from Whitechapel Church. She said, really? I walk my dog in the woods there. She says, I love the looks of that church, but I don't know anybody that goes there. I said, I do. You're welcome to come anytime. I don't know if she will come or not, but if she does come when I am gone, because I'll be traveling quite a bit. Give her a big welcome. She will be a great asset to the church, and it's not going to surprise me about what she doesn't show up.
Isn't it great how God gives us those divine appointments? You never know who you may be meeting or where their heart is, and if you just open up to discussion, God just, thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
I'm thankful my daughter was able to come home and be with us.
Yeah.
Deanna won't tell it, but I will. Yesterday, we had the privilege of serving breakfast to veterans that had been on Indiana Honor Flight. And they always start the breakfast off with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we were standing, and Deanna was standing next to a World War II veteran, said the Pledge of Allegiance with him, and she said, I just felt so honored to be standing next to him. And then the head of the organization said, told her later, or she might have known ahead of time, he was a very special veteran. He served under General Patton.
Wow.
And so and we had just watched the Patton movie, because she'd never seen it, and so she was asking, is he really like that? He goes, yeah. He really is. And so, what a great honor to stand right next to a gentleman that served under General Patton. There was 3 World War II veterans there.
And there's not many left. Anybody else? Well, last week we talked about Thanksgiving. And I want to kind of continue that. I mentioned that it was George Washington that actually was the one who started the whole Thanksgiving holiday season. I put this in your notes, and this is only part of it. The whole letter, I have the whole letter, but this is part of it. It says, by the President of the United States of America, a proclamation whereas it is the duty of all nations, to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and to humbly to implore His protection and favor. And whereas both houses of Congress have, by their joint committee, requested me to recommend to the people of the United States a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed by acknowledging with a grateful heart and many signal favors of the Almighty God, especially by affording them an opportunity peaceably to establish a form of government for their safety and happiness. George Washington. And again, it's a much longer letter, but I just took this excerpt from it. And I wanted, this was, and not only, hundreds of years ago was this established, and as a Christian nation, people who came from Europe so that they could have religious freedom here. It was something that God established thousands of years ago that we would celebrate. It was a part of His festivals that there would be a time of Thanksgiving. And so this whole holiday, even though it gets kind of passed over anymore. We start, if you ever noticed, that, especially I think this year was the worst. It was September, they were putting out Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas all at the same time. Watching holiday movies, in September. It's kind of, people make fun and they say, it's Hallowthanksmas, because it all kinds of comes out together. But we kind of pass over this idea of Thanksgiving. We talked about last week that even when we take communion, the word Eucharist, which is often called communion, is the Greek word for Thanksgiving. That meal that we take together at the end of the service is a Thanksgiving offering to the Lord. So Thanksgiving is incredibly important. And what happens when we don't have a grateful heart or an attitude of gratitude, we take things for granted, we become critical, we become discontent, and all kinds of problems begin to... That's why we need to take time to give God thanks. Even in your prayer, the Lord's Prayer, He gives a model of that, and the model of that is a portion of that is a time of giving thanks to the Lord. Just pausing for a moment and thanking Him that you've got air in your lungs, that you've got eyes to see. I mean, with things that we take for granted over and over and over again, we're here only by the grace of God. And that He came here, suffered for us, died for us, and that our names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. We have the promise of eternity. We have so much to be grateful for. But when we don't pause to do that, we take it for granted. We become discontent. We complain to God about this and about that, and we forget about all that He's already given us. So I wanted to spend a little more time talking about this. And it's basically from this passage in 1 Timothy. Now, I'll break this down as we go into the three different parts of it. But it's this passage in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 8 that says this. Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. We get this idea, and what's happened is the prosperity gospel that's being preached in a lot of churches today is taking from us this peace. When we are content, peace comes with that. This living in shalom is what God wants us to have. And when we have shalom and this peace and contentment, so the prosperity gospel that tells you that if you're following the Lord, you should have this kind of wealth and you should be experiencing all this kinds of material things, is robbed the church of its peace. So I go to church, I tithe, I do this, I do that. How come I don't have a BMW? And how come and people are walking away from the faith because the prosperity gospel has failed them. But God has never failed them. But we have shared grace. We have dispensed of grace for something more. And this passage is telling us that true godliness with contentment itself is wealth. That is the wealth. That we can be content with what God has given us. We brought nothing into this world. We're not going to take anything. I have never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul. It doesn't go with you. And I'm telling you, I grew up in a family that was very, very, very poor. But poverty isn't it either. It's being content with what you have. I mean, we were so poor, when we went to Kentucky Fried Chicken, we licked other people's fingers. I'm sorry. I debated whether I should put that in there or not. But you know me. But you drive by and you see the billboards and you see... And we live in a generation where there's a microwave generation. We have to have everything. We have to have it now. We even got Uber Eats now. If you can't, you don't want to go out and drive someplace, you could pay somebody to bring it to you. And you could get Amazon on the same day. If you pay enough money, they'll bring you what you need and what you want. They'll bring it to you that day. We live in this microwave type of materialistic mindset today. I was remember being on an airplane, and now they don't give you meals or anything like that on an airplane anymore. They give you a bag of nuts, and these they got like 8 peanuts in it, And I get my bag, and some lady comes on, would you like a bag of nuts? I'm like, I definitely want my bag of nuts, and and a water. They don't even give you sodas anymore. So I got my water, my bag of nuts, and the guy behind me said, "Can I get 2 of those?" I said, "Sure." And I was really upset because he got 2 and he had 18 or, but I'm here with my measly, 9 or whatever, So when she came back around, I asked for a bag, for an extra bag. Can I get an extra bag of that? She said, "Sure." I said, "Can you make that 2? Now I was up, 9 on The word here for contentment, it means a perfection, condition of life. into which aid or support is needed, sufficiency or of necessities of life and mind. Contented with its lot, or contentment. In other words, contentment is not dependent on circumstances. That you can be completely independent of external circumstances. That you can be content with what you have. So I wrote down 3 things. Number 1, trust God completely. This leads to contentment. Hebrews 13 verses 5 through 6 says this: don't love money. Be satisfied with what you have. For God has said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. So we can say with confidence that the Lord is my helper. So I have no fear. What can mere people do to me? I love this. We quote this, all the time, but he's talking specifically about contentment here. We said, he will never leave you nor forsake you. I use that in hospitals, I use it, and it fits those places as well. But he's specifically talking about contentment. They did a survey once where they asked somebody who had a group of people who made $25,000 a year. This was a number of years ago, but they made $25,000. So what would you need in order to be content? And the average was $54,000 a year. They asked the same question to a group of people who made $100,000 a year. They said, what would you need to be content? And their average came back at $192,000 a year. So it's double of what you have right now. They asked the Rockefeller one time, he said, and he's multi-billionaire and owned everything at the time. And they said, what do you need to be content? I mean, you've got everything. And his words were, just a little bit more.
Wow.
But and it's easy to judge that, but we do the same thing. And when we're discontent, it robs you of your shalom. It robs you of your peace. It robs you of that intimacy with the Lord, because then what happens is then you become critical to the Lord. Why do they have this and I don't have this? Why am I going through this and they're not going through that? Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 10 says this: those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. Proverbs chapter 30 verse 8 and 9 says this: first, help me never to tell a lie. Second, give me neither poverty nor riches. Give me just enough to satisfy my needs. For if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, who is the Lord? And if I am too poor, I may steal and thus insult God's holy name. So it's the idea of just being content with what you have. There's nothing wrong with having good things and nice things. If God's blessed you, thank God for it. Share it with other people. There's nothing wrong with having a nice car. There's nothing wrong with having a nice house. But that is, if the only goal you have in life is to collect things. One of my things that was when I played Monopoly with my mom back in the young days. And maybe you had a parent that did the same thing. I had hotels on every spot. I had Park Place. And I am still, I'm sorry, but very competitive. And so I was draining my family big time. I was winning, and I was letting them know who the boss was. But before the game could be finished, she took all the board, all the money, all the properties, and she put them back in the box. And she looked at me, she says, it all goes back in the box. He was just teaching me. Because I was getting at that age where 6th grade, my mama passed when I was 13, so I was in 7th grade at the time. And it was just about the time I began to realize we were poor. That everybody in school had nice clothes. And all of mine were hand-me-downs. And she wanted to teach me at a very young age, we should be thankful for what we have. It all goes back in the box. Second thing I wrote in your notes is this: Remember, life is temporary. James chapter 4, verse 14 says this, how do you know what your life will be tomorrow? Your life is like morning fog. Most of you have memorized it. It's like a vapor. It's here a little while, and it's gone. I've done enough funerals, and too many recently even, where you see that at the end of it all, you're put into a box. But it's what you've passed to heaven is what you get to keep. What you've invested in, that's what you get at the end. Because at the end of this life, it's just a box. I know almost every funeral I talk about the fact that we have a cemetery out here. And on each headstone there's a beginning date, a date where you were born. And there's an ending date, the day that you pass. And there's a little dash between. You've heard me talk about this. It's about what you do in that dash. One of the things I love about this church more than anything, especially when we get to this Thanksgiving, I am so thankful for this church. I'm so thankful. And it's not this building. I'm thankful for you. You guys are my friends. You're my family. And one of the things I love about this family here is that you take care of each other. I've been the benefactor of your love. And I've tried desperately. And I told you what Janet said to me, a pastor should smell like sheep. That has been in my head ever since. It's all about taking care of each other. It's all about investing in each other. Because that's what lasts. That's what gets passed to heaven. One day we're all going to stand before the Lord. And there's a seat called the Bema seat, or the judgment seat of Christ. That is a judgment that Christians will face. It's about rewards. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, we talked about this on Wednesday night. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 11 through 15. So there's one foundation, just one foundation. That's what Jesus did. But on that foundation, we build out a gold, silver, costly stone, wood, hay, or stubble. Light will bring it today. It's going to be like God is going to take a big lighter, and He's going to set whatever we had built on that foundation on fire. And if you made it out of wood, hay, and stubble, it's consumed. There's nothing left. You build it out of gold, silver, costly stone. Gold becomes even more pure every time that it's laid to fire to. It becomes even more pure. We're going to receive rewards. Those crowns that people talk about. And I've said this so many times, but what do we do with those crowns? The Bible says at the end, we take those crowns that we've been given, those rewards that we've given, those things that were passed to heaven, and we throw them at the feet of Jesus. That's where that band, Casting Crowns, gets their name. They take their crowns and we're casting them before the Lord. And if you built nothing here, not invested anything, so that it lives in heaven, you'll get your reward, the Bible says, but only as one escaping through the flames. See, it's about investing so that one day we can stand before the Lord and we can say, I am so thankful for what you did for me at the cross, that foundation that you laid for me, that you died for me, you bled for me, that you were beat for me, and that you saved me. And because of what you've done for me on the cross, this is what I've built with what you gave me. And it's gold, it's silver, it's costly stone. And thank you for the reward that you've given me for that. But Lord, I want to give it to you as a gift offering, as a drink offering. I want to pour it out to you. I'm so thankful for what you've done for me. To me, that's what Thanksgiving's all about. What have you done for the Lord? It's the only thing that lasts. So again, with our passage that we started with in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7 says this, after all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. Job chapter 1, verse 21 says this, he said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gave me what I had, and the Lord can take it away. Praise the name of the Lord. I learned it this way, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. See, when you live with eternity in mind, and you know that this life is temporary, you know that we're not promised tomorrow. I made the comment once, and I've said this before, but somebody came to me and said, "Boy, you're really old." Thank you very much. But I looked at him and I said, "How do you know if I'm old? It may be you that's old." He said, "Well, I'm still young." I said, "Yeah, you might be 20 years old, but if you're only living to 22, you're older than I am. And if I'm 59 and I live to 69, I've got more years." It's all from an eternal perspective. From an eternal perspective, he may have been much older than me. You know what? All of a sudden, when he started thinking about that, I'm talking about my own son. All of a sudden, he said, "Dad, you're right." He said, "I'm not promised tomorrow either." He said that as long as you live your life with that in mind, you'll be more thankful. You'll be more grace-giving. You'll be more attentive to things that are important. Not too long ago, he called me the other day and he said, "Remember you told me that about being, that I could be really older than you?" I said, "Yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot." Now he's 27. He says, "Dad, what can I do? You think what is the thing that I can do most that will live eternal value?" I said, "Caleb, you know this. Win people to Jesus. It's the one thing you could do better here that you can't do better in heaven. I could worship better in heaven. I could sing better in heaven. I'll be better looking at everything will be better in heaven. But the one thing I can do while I'm here is win people to Jesus." He said, "Thanks, Dad. I needed that. I'll keep remembering that." And then I told him what Janet said about smelling like sheep. And he started to get a little bit gravelly in his own throat. He said, "Oh, I'm going to remember that one. I'm going to write that one down." All I'm trying to say is this. This is all temporary. Remember when I brought a real long rope in here and I put a tape at the end of it and I said, "This is what our life is. We might get to live 80, 90, 100 years." But then the rope goes on. And the tape represent what time we get here, but the rope going out is this is a blip compared to eternity. Why is it that we spend so much time worrying about this time and we don't spend time worrying about what is going to be forever? So this Thanksgiving, I guess what I'm really trying to say to you this Thanksgiving, I'm really just trying to say, I pray that you have a moment where you can just get alone with the Lord and thank Him for all the things that you've been blessed with. And remember, this life is short. And so when you think, I can't talk to this person in my family because I'm still mad at that person, or I can't do this because I'm angry about that, just settle the issues. Because this life is short. You're not promised tomorrow. I told you a story about I seem to be telling more stories today than normal, but about when I was in college, I had a friend, his name was Hugh Cowgill. Hugh Cowgill had Hodgkin's disease. Or leukemia. It was leukemia. My mom had Hodgkin's disease. He had leukemia. He's 19 years old. And he was dying. He was dying fast. He lost all of his hair because of the chemotherapy and so forth. And at Halloween, we were going to a party, and he dressed as a Can-of-Ban roll-on because of his bald head. He's such a great sense of humor. He's one of those guys, though, that just was, always witnessing and even was almost obnoxious about it. He'd wear these T-shirts like "Heaven or Hell, Turn or Burn," And he would grab people by the nape of the neck in the mall and say, "Do you know Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior?" I mean, he was just bold. We would go preaching at the steps in Marion, Indiana, downtown. The courthouse is there. We would preach on the steps of the courthouse on Friday nights. And everybody was, during that time, the big thing to do in Marion, because there's nothing to do in Marion, was to cruise. So people would get in cars, and there'd be a group of people that go one direction, and then another group of people that would go, and it'd be lines of it, where this car would go this way, another car would go this way, and they would pass each other in circles. This was the big thing to do on Friday night. And so when you passed people in their cars, you did this. That was the big thing to do in Marion, Indiana, back in the 80s. After you got tired of doing that for a while, you got out of your car and you started hanging out on the steps of the courthouse or in the grass area. So every Friday night, people would gather, young people would gather around that area. So Hugh got this great idea that we're going to go preach on the steps of the courthouse steps. So he would stand up there with a sandwich board and, you're going to hell and you need to know it. And after he would get done and people would, boo at him and throw things at him, whatever, he says, okay, now it's your turn. I'm like, I don't want to do that. But I'd get up there and I'd start preaching too. And so we would do this on a Friday night. And one time I asked Hugh, I said, why do you do this? He said, because I'm not promised tomorrow. Every day's got to be my last. I got to live every day like it's my last. He ended up dying at the age of 20. He begged me. He says, and I'm just in college myself. He says, I want you to do my funeral. I've never done a funeral in my life. We had to do 2 services. College Wesleyan Church is where we would have our chapel meetings, and we would seat, I don't know, something like 1,000 or so seats, and it was packed. And they ended up having to do multiple services. People came out for his funeral. But it wasn't just college students that came. It was the people at the mall. It was the people at the steps of the courthouse in Indiana, Marion, Indiana. Those were the people that showed up to his funeral. And he begged me that I would give a salvation message at his funeral service, and so I did. 500 people gave their lives to the Lord. Because his life meant something. He invested everything he had because he viewed his life as if it was already over. This life is temporary. You're not promised tomorrow. What are you doing today? And when you know that you've got so much to be thankful for, when you know that you've got what God has done in your life, that you know that your names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, that you know that you went from sinner to saint, you've gone from hell to heaven, and you've got that to be thankful for, all of a sudden, doing those things and sharing about Jesus becomes something you want to do, not something you have to do. Living your life as if it's already over. Luke chapter 12, verse 15 says this. Then he said, beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own. James chapter 1, verse 17 says, every good gift and every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow or of turning. In other words, be thankful for the things that you've been given. Some of you have been given a lot. Some of you have been given maybe a little bit less. But be content and thankful for what you have. Because the moment you start being discontent, the moment that begins to happen, it robs you of your peace. It robs you of your contentment. And greed sets in. I remember when I was at a house, as was young and had my two babies, and I was hanging out with another couple, and we were getting in their car, and they said, "Oh no, let's not take this one. Let's take the other one because it's a little bit bigger." And they had a baby as well, and they were like, "Let's go to the other car." I said, "Don't you need the car seat?" And they said, No, we got a car seat for that car too. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, 2 car seats? Whoa, I couldn't get over two car seats? I mean, in college, I had 1 pair of shoes, and I took that out of the garbage can. Somebody had thrown a pair of tennis shoes away, and it was better than the tennis shoes that I had, so I took those out of the garbage can, and I wore them for another 2 years. 2 car seats? And I couldn't believe it. After everything was over, I thought, man, I gotta call and my friend and tell them about this. And then I realized, they've only got one car. I've got 2 cars. See, it's all about perspective. Listen, when I was younger, I got to preach at the Crystal Cathedral a couple of times. And there was a pastor there that was a part of the Hispanic ministry. His name was Juan Carlos Ortiz. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's written a book. Listen to what he says. He says, I like the way that Juan Carlos Ortiz tells the story of the pearl of great price. A man sees this pearl and says to a merchant, I want this pearl. How much is it? The seller says it's very expensive. How much? A lot. What, do you think I could buy it? The man asks. Oh yes, says the merchant. Anyone can buy it. But I thought you said it was very expensive. I did. Well, how much? Everything you have, says the seller. All right, I'll buy it. Okay, what do you have? Well, I have $10,000 in the bank. Good, $10,000. Well, what else? That's all I have. Nothing more? Well, I have a few dollars in my pocket. And he says, how much? Let's see. $100. Well, that's mine too, says the seller. What else do you have? That's all, nothing else. Where do you live? The seller asked, and in my house, yes, I own a home. The seller writes that down. Yeah, well, that's mine too. Where do you expect me to sleep? In my camper? Oh, you have a camper, do you? That too. What else? Am I supposed to sleep in my car? Oh, you have a car. Yes, I have 2 of them. They're mine now. Look, you've taken away my money, my house, my camper, and my cars. Where's my family going to live? Oh, so you have a family. Yes, I have a wife and 3 kids. They're mine now. Suddenly the seller exclaims, oh, I almost forgot. You, yourself. You too. Everything becomes mine. Wife, children, house, money, cars, and you too. Then he goes on, now listen, I will allow you to use all these things for the time being, but don't forget, they're all mine, just as you are. And whenever I need any of them, you must give them up, because I am now the owner. That's what Jesus wants. He wants all of you. See, we're on loan. Everything you have is on loan. Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 and 20 says this, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures where? In heaven. Where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in or steal. See, this is all very temporary. I never thought I'd quote Jim Carrey, but I've got him in your notes here. I wish everyone could become rich and famous and do everything they dreamed of so they could see it's not the answer. Did you know that Jim Carrey's been wrestling with whether or not he believed in Jesus Christ? And according to a couple of different articles that I've read, he's recently given his heart to Christ. And he quotes that the reason why is because he had it all. He's had wealth, he's had women, he's had it all, and he couldn't find the answer in any of it. You get the point? Store up your treasures in heaven. And the last thing I wrote is this. Be grateful for what you have. 1 Timothy, again, our passage that we started with, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 8 says this, so if you have enough food and clothing, let us be content. Philippians chapter 4, verse 11 through 13. I love this. This is one of my favorites. I mentioned this last week. Now that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. For I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I said last week, we love to quote that part about I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, but he's talking specifically about contentment, whether I've got a lot or whether I've got little. And the fact is, Paul is writing this from jail. He had everything. He was a Pharisee. He was a wealthy man. He had prestige. He had a name. People feared him. And all of a sudden he gave it all up for Jesus. And one time he maybe had a full stomach, now he may have an empty stomach. He said, I've lived with a lot, I've lived with little. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And he's writing this from a prison cell. The last thing I wrote in your notes is this. For I determined not to know anything among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. That's what this is all about. When we start thinking about Thanksgiving and what the season means, it's my prayer that you will take this week, wherever you're at. If you're having a pop, I remember one Thanksgiving, Papa T had just been murdered, and I didn't want to go home, and I was feeling sorry for myself, and I was living in a trailer park, and my job was to take care of trailers, people that rented them, and I have to fix them, and so they gave me a place to live while I worked there, and I'm in my trailer all by myself. I wasn't trailer trash, it was trailer treasure, by the way. I love that place. It was my favorite place to live. And so I was living in this place, and I took care of it, but I was all by myself, and I had a turkey pot pie, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And God, I don't have this, and you've taken this away, and you've done that, and all of a sudden, as I'm sitting there with my cat and my turkey pot pie, I could feel the Lord say to me, what else can I do for you? And I started listing out all the things that I had. I had a nice place to live. I had a car. I had health. I could have gone to people's house, but I felt so sorry for myself that I didn't go to the people's houses who invited me, and was complaining that I had no place to go because I was all upset about what I didn't have. And then I wrote down how many people had invited me to their home. And I turned down, and I would rather feel miserable than actually be with them. All I'm saying is this. There's so much to be thankful for. And so when you sit around your Thanksgiving tables this week, take the time just to be thankful. If you're on this side of the sod, you have a lot to be thankful for. But I tell you what, I'm looking forward to the other side. I used to fear death. I used to fear dying. I can't wait to get there. Now, I'm not going to go out there and do anything to get there real fast, because I've got work to do here. There are people who are dying and going to hell and need Jesus. Now, as we take communion,